Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is the cover that I put on top of the frame I made. And it's just a diamond plate aluminum cover. That way you don't have to worry about painting it and it won't rust or anything like that. This cover goes on to this framework I made to cover that motor there. All right, cookies are done. Look at that. First, I want to thank Andrew for sending me this perfect blue powder coat match that he uses there. Andrew, thanks for sending that to me so quick so I could get, well, I'm sure you guys can see it there, the one thing that I made for this. But what I'd like to do is go over some of the different things that I've made for this axis. And keep in mind, when I did the video on this a while back, when Adam was over here with me and we were splitting wood, I couldn't find a thing that I would change about this splitter. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something I wouldn't add to it to maybe make its functioning a little better or make it a little more user-friendly. In my particular case, some of you might find these completely absurd or why in the world would I want to do something like that? But a lot of this was personal preference for myself, and I think through the video we'll explain why I did some of these changes to it. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of this stuff. All right, you've seen what I've made. Now I'd like to go through and explain some of this stuff. And as I ran this machine, and I know that having run it with Adam and him using it over there, and I've talked to him about some of this stuff. And there is one thing that may be kind of controversial that Adam didn't really think we needed, but because I said I was going to make one, I had to stick to it, and I had to make it, and I had to create something that I didn't let you guys down on, so you knew that I kept my word. But the first thing I'd like to talk about here is when you're running this machine, and Adam, you can contest to this, I've got kind of a wood simulation here to what it looks like over at your house. We got a stack of wood over here. We've got the log lift, the machine, a basket, and you usually have 2 or 3 baskets on this side of you, all right? So when you're over here and you're running this machine, somebody walks up and says, "Hey, Adam, what are you doing today?" And you've got your headphones on, you've got the machine running, full tilt, your phone rings. What's the first thing you got to do?
Gotta walk all the way around, back to the engine, idle it down, and hit the kill switch to turn it off.
Hey, don't look at that. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the kill switch on these engines is here, and the throttle is over here. And as Adam just showed, he had to walk all the way around the machine to shut it off or to at least idle it down. So what I did was, I knew there had to be a better way. So I came and I looked, and at our local tractor store, I found a throttle lever. And it's just a simple lawnmower style throttle lever that comes down. And I attached it to the throttle linkage back in here. Very simple. It's just like a little Z hook that goes onto that. And all I did was hooked it into the spot that's already on there and zip tied it along here. And the other thing I did was the kill switch that's on the side over here, I took that, and fortunately it's got the bullet connectors on it, and all I did was made an extension, come up here, made a mount. I took the kill switch out of back there and I put it up here. So now I've got the throttle and the kill switch right up here at the operator station. And as you can see, here is the kill switch back here and the throttle lever. You can see I put a little sticker on there, and I created a little bit of a guard so nothing will ever land on that and break that. But Adam, tell me what you think you're gonna like about that switch, or why.
Well, that's definitely something I'm going to use a lot. One, just for starting and stopping the machine, but having it in this location, every time I come out here, I've got headphones in and earmuffs on over top. I've got some Bluetooth that hook up to my phone, so I'm listening to music while I'm splitting. And never fails, whenever I fire this thing up, is always when people need to get a hold of me the most. So I'll hear my phone ringing in my pocket, pull it out, and it's an important call. I got to take it. So yeah, I got to walk all the way around to the back side, pull my earmuffs off, and usually I end up missing the call and then have to call the person back by the time I'm able to get the machine shut down and all that. So this is going to be nice to pull the headphones off, throttle it down, kill it, take the phone call before it goes to voicemail.
So that was one of the things that I noticed when we were running this machine. And Adam and I were having a conversation while it was running, and it was running at full idle. And it was either him or I that had to run around the back to idle it down, to shut it off, or whatever. And right now, while you're running this machine, you can have this thing at full RPM running. And let's say I stop over to see what Adam's doing, and I say, hey, Adam. He would literally have to run around the back, turn it down. So now we can throttle it up, throttle it down, or shut it off. It's just a simple little switch there that it was actually on the engine itself. So that was one of the upgrades that I would love to see EASTONMADE do, is put some kind of throttle lever and a kill switch up here out in front of the machine. And it's only important because everybody's got a stack of wood on one side, and they've either got the conveyor, outfeed, a dump trailer, baskets, whatever.
Or even just a pile of split wood on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, this is probably the bare minimum of what would be on this side.
Yeah.
You know, most of you guys that have these machines have the conveyor coming out the side, baskets, conveyor, trailer, whatever. So you're really walking way around, or you're climbing over your wood pile just to turn this thing down or shut it off.
And like you said, how it was set up from the factory, not the end of the world, worked fine, did exactly what it was supposed to do. This is just an upgrade that makes it nicer and easier to use, which is what your specialty is.
There's got to be a better way. All right, so I did want to move on to a couple other things, but this one first is this log lift here. When you transport this thing going down the highway or down the road, you have to unhook this and fold it up. You unhook that pin down here, and it is very, very heavy. And I was watching Ohio Woodburners channel when log hauler Jesse was borrowing Joe's over there, and they were over here holding this plate up and everything they could, and it is extremely heavy. So one thing I noticed was when you pull this pin, you physically either have to be under this, and it's hard to do, and I ran into it when we brought this over here. So because Adam doesn't have his conveyor on, and maybe we'll let him explain that in a later video, but that left this winch over here unused. And I got to looking at that after we did bring this over. I thought, why can't we just take that winch, bring it up over the top, and come down and hook it to this? Now this table already has a hole built into it. I don't know what Andrew was thinking or the intention for that was, other than when it is folded up to strap it over from falling.
When we got this from EASTONMADE, when it was shipped with a ratchet strap from there to, I can't remember, somewhere up here, because it does fold up to keep it a lot narrower. So I think they machined that in there for shipping. And I've seen other YouTube channels that have these. They do the same thing. They'll take a ratchet strap and use the ratchet strap to raise and lower that, to let it down, to hook up the hydraulic cylinder, to get the pin in there. But yeah, using the winch from the conveyor makes it a lot easier, because now you can actually winch it up and winch it back out.
And here's what I ran into when I put a ratchet strap on here to try this, is it works great for ratcheting it up to relieve the pressure on that cylinder down there to pull the pin. But when you want to release this thing, let's say you're up, folded all the way up, and you go to release it down, ratchet straps don't have a backwards motion on it. As soon as you release it, and I was standing here and I thought, boy, I better not put my leg between that and the wheel, or this thing, when I release it, it could come down and hit. And sure enough, that's exactly what it did. When I released that ratchet strap, it swung down, hit the ground, and hit the side of that tire, and I thought, boy, am I glad my leg wasn't there. So I knew right then and there that here was an opportunity to make this a little bit better. So what I did was I utilized the winch that was already here. And Adam tells me that this machine is a unicorn, and we'll go over why he calls it the unicorn of the Axis machine. But one other thing I noticed in most other Axis videos is they've got a cable on here. Fortunately, the way it worked out with Adam's was this has a strap. So I rerouted the strap up over the top of the machine and back down, and we hook it into that. Now I can use that winch to take the weight off of this, unhook that, and then winch it all the way up to the top. When you get it back to where you're going with it, you can use the winch to lower it back down. So if you follow this strap down, it comes up over, and all I did was welded up a piece of round steel with 2 end caps on it, and those end caps just keep this strap from ever sliding off the one side of it, and it goes down and around over to the winch down there. So I utilized the top of the frame to weld a point on each side of that to hold this little guide across here. And I thought about making this thing some kind of roller type of tubing or whatever, but it's not used a ton that you need to worry about it moving. This strap will just literally slide on there to allow you to raise and lower that log lift when you have it unhooked from the hydraulics. You can see up through here that round tube keeps this strap from rubbing on the side of there, and it comes down and it fits nicely between the lower hydraulic line back down to the winch itself. So that was one of those things that there was a little bit of a safety issue. There was a concern with getting out from under that when you unhook that pin. So we got that on there, and that I guess really makes it a lot easier for transporting this unit. One other thing I want to jump to real quick, pretty simple solution, and this wasn't my idea, but I added to it. I saw somebody else's video, and I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, but they just had one of these cheap, this is $1.50 Harbor Freight brush. Mm-hmm. And when they were done with it, they just stuffed it inside the fork tube, which is fine. And that's where I'm hoping that Adam and I will remember to put it when it's raining or when you're not using it after you're done with it for the day. But what I did was just screwed a magnet onto the back side of it. Why you need this brush is a lot of times throughout the day, you get a ton of chafe and splinters and bark and everything else laying on your table. So this just makes it real nice and easy to come up here and sweep it off. So what we had thought was just put it right there through the day. When you're running the machine, you can pull it off, sweep it off, and then put it back. So that was a quick, simple fix for keeping your table cleaned off. I promise we're almost done with these upgrades. There's only 2 left that I got, and I also got to apologize for this wind that we've got right now. But there's one upgrade that I did to this that Adam actually asked for when we were doing this. And maybe, Adam, how about you explain it and tell us what makes this thing so special?
All right, so as you guys can tell, this is a vertical splitter. So getting it in and out of a residential garage is not feasible because it is so tall. So this thing lives outside. And I got this EASTONMADE Axis when they first started making them. The serial number on it is Axis 005. So this is the 5th Axis that they ever made. If you guys are familiar with EASTONMADE, they had a supply chain issue with their Honda engines. They couldn't get these in anymore, or at least enough to keep up with production. So they switched to a Vanguard engine. I'm not sure how many EASTONMADE Axises out there exist with the Honda engine, but we have one of them. So I always consider this to be somewhat unique and kind of a relic, because you cannot get an EASTONMADE Axis with a Honda engine on it anymore unless you find a used one. So because of that, and because this thing lives outside, I asked Doug, I said, is there something that we can do to protect this engine from the elements because it lives outside? I said, I'd like to put some kind of roof or something. When I first got it, I started putting a tarp over just the engine, and that was a pain in the butt because you get a windstorm that comes through, blows it off, shreds it, kind of like today.
And then the other thing is you couldn't put that tarp on there when it's warm after you ran it. You'd have to come down later that day to put it on, correct?
It's like putting a cover on a grill. You got to wait for it to cool down. Next thing you know, you forget. It's 3 days later, and yeah. So it just putting a tarp over the engine wasn't working out for me. And so this is what Doug came up with. That was the problem I posed to Doug, and this is the solution that Doug came up with. So I'll let you explain what you did here.
So the challenge is to come up with a way to put some kind of roof over this thing. But the problem is you still need to be able to access it to get fuel into here and get to the air filter on the thing. So what I did was just a little latch system on here and flip that up. I knew it needed to be on a hinge to still allow access to that. So this framework that I put on here is the support for the lid or the roof, whatever you want to call that. It's just a frame that I made, comes back down and attaches to the fork pocket, and I bolted it on in case you would ever want to take it off. And there's just a simple hinge on the back side here. I welded that hinge to the top framework and to the lower framework. So now this thing keeps all the rain off of it. You know, when it rains, it doesn't land on the motor, isn't sitting there. That lid is there to keep the sun off it, keep the rain off it, keep the weather out of it.
One more point I was going to make that we had to consider was when you're towing it down the road, wind. So, you know, we were thinking about, do you want to make something that's removable? And so this latch system basically just locks this in. So when you're towing it down the road, this isn't going to fly off. So just something else that if somebody else is going to try to do something like this, you've got to make sure that you can either remove that top for when you trailer it or lock it down so the wind isn't going to take it.
Yeah, that was one thing that Adam says, well, let's make it removable. And I'm in the firm belief that if it can be removed, it can be lost.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, now this thing has got to stay on the machine. So that's why I put the hinge and the latch on it, because if this was just sitting on here, as soon as you hook it up, tow it down the road with the vehicle, that thing would fly off. So we put the latch on there to hold that in. So I guess that's probably all the upgrades that Adam really wanted.
Yeah, that was the biggest one for me, was giving some kind of protection to that engine.
And now we're going to get to the upgrade that I wanted. And it was kind of controversial between Adam and I, and he's like, well, we don't really need it. And I thought, well, yeah, but I want it. And it was just one of those things. So let's take a look at this out front here. All right, so I've added this protector device here. And I know in the other video where I was running the log splitter, I talked about having some kind of rail up here, because on occasion, this log, if it's a cherry, if it's a very twisted, crooked cherry, you don't always get perfectly parallel cuts on the things. And on occasion, that thing will tip out. And I've got a little video snippet of log hauler Jesse also when he was using Joe's over at Ohio Woodburner splitter, where when he come down with the splitting head on that, it kept kicking out on him and kept kicking out on him. Where my biggest concern is, and when I ran this over to Adams, was I had it happen to me a couple times where this thing kicked out. Keep in mind, if there was a big knot or a crotch or anything in here, and that thing come down and really started loading up pressure and kicked out on you, that thing could hit you very bad in the lower region, whether it's your gut, whatever. So the reality of me feeling better about splitting wood on here, I thought, okay, we need some kind of plate on here. You might be looking at that and going, well, you just screwed yourself for anything over 22 inches or whatever that is. I don't remember what it is. But actually I didn't. Because when I designed this plate, I made it so if Adam didn't like this, he could take it out and put it wherever, but I know that when I'm running it, I want to keep it there. I know that I didn't want anything sticking out here because I didn't want it interfering when you're moving around and doing the logs. So let's say he brings a log on here that's wider than the table. Well, what I did was I made this thing so it pulls out. It can slide in and it can pull out. And how I made this is It's got these two little teeth up here. The two legs go into the existing pocket holes. You have to tip this thing up to get it in, then drop it down. And when it's down, the weight of it, it locks it in. It won't slide backwards. So you pick it up a little bit, slide it in, and it stays locked in position. Now, if I have a log kick out on me, and that thing spits like that, it's gonna hit this plate before it ever hits me. It's just something that makes me feel a little more confident about this. And one thing in the comments I'd love to have you guys do is be as creative as you possibly can and come up with a name for this thing. Whether it's the gut buster or the ball protector or whatever you want to call it. Leave me a comment on what we would call this thing so we could go back to Andrew and say, hey, we need one of those ball busters on there. Who knows? Whatever you want to call it. Let's see how creative you can get with it. The other thing about this is let's say you don't like this or you don't want it on there. It's easily removed. We can put it in the bed of the truck. We can put it in the side-by-side. I even thought about putting in something for up there, but I got to get Adam's okay on that. But it's 1/2 inch thick plate that I used my plasma cutter to machine it down, welded some legs on it, and then these locking teeth, like I said, go under here. If you've got a 30-inch log, it will fit in there. So now you still have the protector in front of you, and if you've got a big massive log, you still have this thing in front of you protecting you. Now, on me, it protects my gut. On Adam, who is about 6 inches taller, protects a little more important stuff for him.
Yeah, so, if Lana wants another kid.
Exactly. So now there's something here that's a little bit better protection for a log that should get split out. And I know guys are going to say, well, turn that log around. And like I expressed in the last video, if you turn it around and it catches and it comes the top side out, then it's going to hit you up here. I'd rather have something down here to know that it's going to kick out and split it that way. So you can see that this thing only sticks out 1/2 inch past the bed of the splitter itself. And I know that one of Adam's reservations about doing this, and I'll kind of let him explain that.
Yeah, so when Doug was first explaining to me what this was going to be, I thought it was going to be some big giant thing that was going to permanently stick out like this and you're going to be hitting your hip on it all the time. But the fact that it is collapsible, the fact that it's removable, I'm okay with it. And I do feel better knowing that it's there. You know, like Doug said, typically whenever I have a log that would be a good candidate for popping out at you, I would just turn it and rotate it and split it like this so that if it was going to kick anywhere, it was going to be kicking back into the beam there. But now it's not a concern, so I'm okay with it. I like it.
All right, well, I think as far as the upgrades, really none of these were upgrades to make the machine any better. I believe Andrew, like I said at the beginning, Andrew's made a top-notch log splitter in the vertical fashion here. This is probably one of the best splitters of all the years of splitters that I've ever run. I like this one the most. It's just everything about it I like. The things that I did to it were more of personal preferences for either Adam or myself. And if you like any of these things, I can honestly say that I don't think they're going to be putting a cover on it EASTONMADE. I don't think they're going to be making the whatever you guys come up with a special name for that. Yeah. And the only thing I can think that maybe Andrew might find interesting or fascinating that would be interesting to do is to put the kill switch and the throttle up here on that. And that was a very easy upgrade to do to that. He may or may not be interested in doing that, but it is very, very nice to be able to throttle it down and shut it off out here in the front of the machine. Granted, somebody's going to say, but you still got to walk around behind it to start it. I understand that. But until I can figure out how to make a pull cord come up, over, and around, you know, it is what it is. So I guess that's the upgrades we've left with it. And yes, I put my sticker on there. Adam said I was allowed to. Well, I think that we're probably going to end on the video there with all the modifications. And I mean, honestly, look how pretty that thing looks with the factory color that Andrew sent. But We've got a pile of wood here that we're going to split up, but I'm not going to video that. I'm going to leave this up to Adam for when he takes it home, and he can do all his trials with it and see what he likes or what he would like me to remove or change or do whatever. So I guess, Adam, can you do the closing for me?
If you guys enjoyed this one, give Doug a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and he'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks.